One day, not today maybe, not tomorrow perhaps, but one day, you will look back at this season that almost broke you and thank God for it. I know that sounds impossible, maybe even offensive to pain. How can anyone thank God for the season that exhausted them? For the doors that shut? For the prayers that seemed unanswered? How? Because one day, you may see what pain was building while you were begging for escape. What if this hard season is not a detour from your purpose, but the road into it? What if the chapter you keep calling heavy is holy? Because maybe your life is not falling apart. Maybe your life is being reassembled, and reassembly can feel like breaking before it feels like beauty. Think of a sculptor. To reveal art, stone gets cut. To reveal gold, fire gets used. To reveal depth, pressure comes. And maybe what feels like too much pressure is actually proof something rare is being formed, maybe in you. And maybe the reason this season hurts is because growth often does. Not because growth is cruel, but because becoming stretches identity. It asks old fears to loosen, old patterns to die, old versions of you to fade. And that can feel like loss before it feels like liberation. Maybe you've been grieving what was meant to be shed. Maybe you've been fighting what was meant to free you. And maybe this changes the way you see everything. Because what if this season isn't punishment, it's preparation? And what if one day you will thank God for the pressure that made you stronger, the silence that deepened trust, the waiting that purified desire, the pain that woke you up? What if one day this pain makes sense? Maybe that day is coming. There is a version of you being born through this, not improved, transformed. And maybe you haven't recognized that, because pain tends to make people focus on what is hurting, not what is emerging. But what is emerging matters. Maybe stronger boundaries, maybe deeper faith, maybe courage, maybe wisdom, maybe a self no longer ruled by fear. Can you imagine that? A self no longer controlled by what once intimidated you. Because perhaps that is who this season is forming. And becoming often feels messy. Birth always does. Nothing elegant about labor. Yet life comes through it. And maybe you are in labor spiritually. Something is being born, something bigger than you can name. And maybe all this pressure is not crushing, it is contractions. Read that again. Contractions. Signs life is near. What if that is true? Then pressure means promise. And maybe that changes how you breathe today. Because maybe you are not merely enduring, you are giving birth to becoming. And the version of you emerging may be unrecognizable to the one who entered this season. Stronger, lighter, truer, free. And maybe that is worth every hard mile. What if nothing important is delayed? What if everything is arriving exactly through the timing needed for your becoming? We call things late because we compare, because we rush, because culture worships speed. But heaven often honors timing, ripening, readiness, alignment. And maybe what you call delay is alignment happening, people aligning, doors aligning, character aligning, future aligning. And maybe if things came sooner, they would have come incomplete. But what is coming may be arriving whole, and whole things are worth waiting for. Maybe relationships whole, peace whole, purpose whole, blessings whole. Because half-ripe promises hurt people. Prepared promises sustain them. Maybe yours is being prepared, not delayed, prepared. And maybe that changes the story you've been telling yourself. Because perhaps nothing is late. Maybe heaven is exact. And exact timing often feels slow until it suddenly feels perfect. Maybe perfect is coming. What if this season was never about surviving pain? What if it has been teaching you how to carry more peace without losing it, more blessing without fearing it, more responsibility without breaking, more purpose without shrinking? Because greater things require greater inner capacity. And maybe capacity has been growing quietly through every hard lesson, every unanswered question, every day you kept going. When quitting looked easier, that grew something. Do not call it nothing. Call it capacity. Because maybe what you prayed for years ago is bigger than the old version of you could have held. And perhaps God has been loving you enough to enlarge you first, before release. before elevation, before abundance. Because elevation without inner maturity crushes people, but maturity sustains. And maybe that is what this season has been doing, teaching your soul how to carry more. Think about that. Maybe disappointment taught you discernment. Maybe silence taught you intimacy. Maybe hardship taught you strength. Maybe delays taught you trust. All of that is capacity, sacred capacity. And maybe, one day, what you receive externally will make sense because of what was built internally. And you will realize, I needed this season, not because pain was pleasant, but because preparation was necessary. And maybe that changes how you see struggle, not enemy only, but teacher too. And perhaps you are being taught how to carry more, and more may be closer than you know. What if the life you long for is one brave decision away, not 1,000 steps? One decision to trust deeper, to stop shrinking, to stop agreeing with fear, to move. Because often, life changes, not through giant revolutions, but courageous moments. One yes, one surrender, maybe beginning, maybe resting, maybe obeying, maybe simply saying, I will not live beneath calling anymore. And maybe that one decision starts a chain reaction, because courage compounds. One brave step creates room for another, and suddenly, a new life forms from one brave yes. Could it be that simple? Maybe, because sometimes complexity is fear's disguise. Transformation can begin simply, through truth believed, through lies rejected, through one courageous move. And maybe the future you want has been waiting for one brave decision. Yours. What if today is that day? What if this is that moment? Would you answer it? Because perhaps everything shifts through courage smaller, but holier than you expected. And maybe one day you will see this whole season through a word you never imagined applying to pain. Mercy. Mercy in closed doors. Mercy in delays. Mercy in endings. Mercy in wilderness. Mercy in the things that forced you deeper. Because maybe what felt severe was protective. Maybe what felt withholding was loving. Maybe what felt confusing was wise. And one day, with healed perspective, you may see it. That mercy was hiding inside things you resisted. And awe may replace confusion, because you'll realize God was not absent. He was careful. Careful with your timing. Careful with your heart. Careful with your future. Careful with what you could carry. And suddenly, old pain reads differently, not as evidence of abandonment, but of guidance. And maybe that realization will heal things inside you, even now, because maybe you can begin trusting. This season has mercy in it, even before understanding all of it. And maybe that trust changes how you walk. Lighter, freer, more open. Because perhaps your story is not being ruined. It is being redeemed. Even now, especially now. And one day, you may stand in joy, looking back at this season, and whisper, thank you. I didn't understand then, but now I see. It was mercy. And maybe that day is coming, sooner than you think. So hold on. Stay open. Keep believing. Because maybe this season you struggle to understand will become the very season you thank God for. And that may be one of the holiest surprises of your life.